The Toyota Prius is the car that made hybrid power famous, and it's become the go-to choice for Uber drivers in big cities around the world. It's been on the road for more than 25 years, and now there's a new 5th generation model, and things are very different. For a start, just look at it. The Prius has built its reputation over the years on being sensible, frugal, reliable, but it's never been known as being particularly attractive. This new model, though, has had a huge makeover from before, so tell us in the comments what you think about how it looks now. And it's not just its appearance which has changed, the dimensions are different as well. So it's 50mm lower, it's 22mm wider, it's also 46mm shorter, but the distance between the front and rear wheels is actually 50mm longer, so it could be even more practical inside. It's also different underneath. Now technically it's still on the same platform as before, but it's been heavily updated to improve stiffness, refinement, stability, and it's now very similar underneath to the new Corolla, which we know is a very good car. Now, even though when you're in a big city like London, it seems as though every other car is a Prius, they tend to be battered old models with about 500,000 miles on the clock. And the fact is that new versions of the car in the last few years haven't really sold very well at all. And certainly compared to the Corolla and the CHR, the number of Prius models that Toyota has shifted in the UK is absolutely minuscule. And for a while it looked like this new Prius just wasn't ever going to make it to the UK, and instead Toyota was going to prioritise SUVs and push Uber drivers into Corolla touring sports. But a change of heart meant that the Japanese manufacturer has decided to bring this to the UK after all, but it will only be available as a plug-in hybrid. Now, of course, the original Prius championed regular hybrid technology, and in some other markets you will be able to get this new version with a regular hybrid setup. But in the UK and in Europe, if you buy this new Prius, it will only be available as a plug-in hybrid. And that means it's going to be up against cars like the Peugeot 308 plug-in hybrid, as well as the VW Golf e-hybrid, and there's also going to be a new Audi A3 plug-in around the corner, which will be a rival to this as well. So in the UK, if you buy a Prius, it will come with a 2-litre petrol engine, a 13.6 kilowatt-hour battery, and a potential electric range of up to 53 miles. Now, we're going to tell you later exactly how many miles this will really do on a full charge, but first, let's look at this interior. Now, we've already seen on the outside that the new Prius has had quite a big makeover, and it's also had a touch-up inside as well, and it really looks a lot better for all these changes. So it now has a relatively upmarket look and feel. Okay, not all the materials are amazing quality, but the touch points up here on the dashboard and these plastics, the steering wheel especially, and all the buttons and switches just feel really nice and robust and built to last as well. You also get a good driving position in the Prius with electric lumbar adjustment on all trims. The top trim level gets electric seat adjustment as well. Visibility is decent, but it's not perfect because you've got all these sloping lines outside on the car, which means that this pillar's quite long and gets in the way a bit at junctions, but you've got a lot of glass around it, so it's not too bad. The view out the back, again, there's lots of chunky pillars, so the view over your shoulder's not great, and it's quite a shallow rear windscreen as well. But you get front and rear parking sensors, you get a reversing camera as standard, and on top trim XL, you also have a camera on the roof, which gives you a live feed on the rear view mirror of exactly what is behind you. And you can use that if you've got luggage piled high to the top, or if you've just got lots of people sat in the back, so you can't see that great out of there. But perhaps the best thing about this driving position is just the nice simple layout of things. So look, I've got loads of nice physical buttons on the steering wheel here. I've also got a full selection of these buttons for the climate control, and it's great to see this, and they all feel really nice to use as well, because in a Peugeot, in VW, all the climate controls are now on a touch screen, which is fiddly to use, distracting, but no such problems in this Prius. As for the infotainment system, you have this 12.3-inch touchscreen, and when you're using Toyota's native system, it's good that you've got some icons close to the driver on this side of the screen to hop between different shortcut menus. But for the most part, you're going to be using smartphone mirroring, aren't you? So you get wireless CarPlay as standard, and you get wired Android Auto available as well. But there isn't actually any wireless phone charging available at all. But you can see you've got 2 USB-C ports down here. Now, the other screen you've got in here is your digital driver display. And the good thing is that it's nice and high up, so it's well within your line of sight. However, Some people have said that the steering wheel blocks the driver display for them. For me, in my driving position, I don't find that a problem because the wheel is low enough and the driver display is high enough to mean it's not an issue for how I want to sit, but that might be something that you have to try. What is frustrating with this though is because yes, it's got the information that you need, but it's quite a busy layout and a lot of the numbers and icons are quite small, so it's a bit overwhelming and will take some getting used to when you first drive this car. In terms of storage here, you've got good sized door bins, you've got nicely padded armrest with some carpeted storage underneath it and 2 more USB-C ports. You've got a handy spot here to put your smartphone, there's 2 cup holders, there's a tray here, and you can remove this to show a hashtag hidden compartment underneath it, which is actually quite useful. So big improvements on the old car and now a nice interior in this Prius. So when you've been picked up in your Uber, what's it like in the rear seats? Well, a couple of 6-footers can sit back here and stretch their legs out, no problem at all. Lots of legroom in the back, and it's better than the old car, as we said earlier, because the distance between the front and rear wheels is 50mm longer in this new Prius than the old one. However, the problem is with headroom, because as you can see, I'm not 6 foot and I can't sit up straight without my head getting buried in the roof lining here, which isn't great, to be honest. You should though be able to sit 3 adults side by side, because in this middle seat you can see it's a wide seat base, and yes, it is raised up compared to the other 2, so your head is even more buried in the roof lining, but at least this lump in the floor is quite low and it's easy to put your feet either side of it. So overall, it's not as cramped in the back as a Peugeot 308, but a VW Golf is better than this. And it's just a shame that a potential Uber isn't actually that great in the rear seats. Now, the Prius has a pretty big boot opening compared to its other hatchback rivals. You can see it's very, very tall and should make it easy to put things in and get them out again. But how much stuff can you actually fit in the back? We managed to get 5 carry-on size suitcases into the back of this Prius, which is the same number that we could fit in a Golf plug-in hybrid. Now, that's not exceptional, but that's reasonably useful for a plug-in hybrid. Those 5 suitcases are below this load bay cover here, which you can remove and very helpfully fold in half to make it easier to store away. You can also fold down the rear seats, and actually I'll point out back here that these hidden door handles aren't particularly Uber friendly, are they? Because you can imagine people never being able to find a way to actually get into the rear seats. Anyway, it's simple folding down the rear seats with the levers on top of the seat backs, and when they are down, they are flat with the boot floor, which is also very handy. So this is reasonably practical, if not particularly exceptional. You also get a powered tailgate on range-topping XL trim. Now, if you're looking for a plug-in hybrid, you probably aren't interested first and foremost in boot space. It's probably more running costs and what the car can do using its battery, because you probably look at a spec sheet and see 565 miles per gallon and think that's incredible, imagine how much money I'll save on fuel. But of course, as we know, the reality of running a plug-in hybrid in real-world driving conditions is very different. So those official fuel economy figures are wildly inaccurate, and what you will actually achieve will vary massively depending on your driving style, how topped up you keep the battery, how long your journeys are, and things like that. But we did a real-world fuel economy test in this Prius, and with a completely depleted battery, it managed fuel economy of 53.8 miles per gallon. That is in real world driving conditions, and we had a VW Golf on the same test in exactly the same conditions, and that achieved 48 miles per gallon. It's a similar story when it comes to the electric range of the Prius, where the official figure is on the optimistic side, and what you'll achieve in real world conditions is likely to be less. So with the Prius, if you go for the entry-level design model, then you get 17-inch alloys, and the official pure electric range is up to 53 miles, which is very far. If you go for a range-topping XL model, then that drops the range down to 44 miles because it's got bigger 19-inch alloys. In our real-world testing, we had a range-topping XL model with the bigger 19-inch alloys. We charged it up to full, we drove it in real-world genuine driving conditions, and we managed to cover 37.6 miles before the battery went flat. Now, you can imagine that will be useful for many people's local trips, but the fact is, by plug-in hybrid standards, it's better than a Peugeot 308, but the Golf on the same day covered a huge 73 miles. And that's important because not only is that much better in the real world, but the Golf's longer official range also puts it in a lower benefit-in-kind tax bracket to the Prius, which means the Golf will be much cheaper to run for company car buyers in the UK. But just remember that a fully electric car will be even cheaper still. For people looking to buy this in cash or on a PCP finance deal, remember that plug-in hybrids might not make a great deal of sense, because they cost so much more than a regular hybrid or just a petrol car. So any potential savings in fuel costs, if there are any, will be very difficult to make up for the extra money you've spent in the first place to own it. If you are looking to buy this outright though, then the list price of an entry-level Prius is slightly less than the cheapest Peugeot 308 plug-in hybrid, but a little more than a VW Golf. There are 2 trim levels to choose from, and you get loads of equipment as standard. So even if you go for entry-level design, you still get things like 17-inch alloys, you get heated front seats, ambient interior lighting, keyless entry, automatic lights and wipers, rear privacy glass, and adaptive cruise control. If you go for range-topping Excel, then you get things like 19-inch alloys, you get ventilated front seats, this digital rear-view mirror, and a powered tailgate. The new Prius only comes with a 3-year warranty as standard, which doesn't really sound that impressive. However, you can extend it for up to 10 years or 100,000 miles as long as you get it serviced at a Toyota dealer every year. And on top of that, we know that the Japanese manufacturer has a fantastic record when it comes to reliability generally across all of its products, because in our annual What Car Reliability Survey, Toyota always finishes very close to the top. So, the Prius is frugal, it should be reliable as well. That all sounds quite similar to what the old car offered. But where this is, yet again, leaps ahead of the previous car is what it's like on the road. Because this is a really decent plug-in hybrid. So when you start the car and move off, if there's enough charge in the battery, you'll be in electric mode. Or you can decide to put it in hybrid mode to let the car decide whether it wants to use electric or petrol. And progress is really smooth, it's quiet. The accelerator response is really crisp as well. We timed it from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 6.9 seconds, so it's certainly quick enough. And yes, if you're accelerating hard, the engine can sound pretty raucous with this CVT gearbox, but for the most part, it's pretty hushed inside. This is a comfortable plug-in hybrid as well. Now, cars like this can struggle to deliver a comfortable ride because you've got a heavy battery, you've got a heavy engine as well, and that puts a lot of strain on the suspension. But in this Prius, the suspension does a good job of rounding off those harsh impacts that happen underneath the car. And it's generally pretty settled and calm inside here. And while this isn't a sports car, we wouldn't describe it as sporty to drive. The steering is fairly direct, the body control is good as well. So really, this is at least as good as the plug-in hybrid Golf. So the new Prius is certainly better than the old one, and it's a decent car. It's ultimately, though, not up there with the very best plug-in hybrids around today. Rear seat space is a little disappointing, the electric range doesn't really stand out from its rivals, and the pricing isn't competitive enough to make up for that. Thanks for watching this review. To see another one, click up there. Make sure you subscribe to our channel as well. And to read more about the Prius and all of its rivals, go to whatcar.com.